Okay, we're gonna get this meeting started. So welcome everyone for coming to the town meeting. Today is Monday, May 2nd. Before I open the floor, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping if I could. We're gonna try to use a roving mic again like we did the last time, so you're able to speak from your seat. Secondly, this is the town meeting. It's not the budget hearing. If you were here on April 11th, that was a budget hearing, and we let people talk as long as they wanted to because it was a hearing. Tonight's a town meeting. There'll be a 2-minute time limit on speaking, and our moderator, whoever that may be, will be handling that. Also, I just wanted to mention that there's a few things that aren't on this town meeting that you might be thinking about because we've talked about those. There's been talk about the demolition of the old middle high school. Some people call it the one-story wing. There's been talk about leasing out the first floor of the 2-story wing, the old high school. And there's going to be some talk down the road on some sale of town property, and some other things will come up. We're hoping to have another town meeting on Monday, June 13th to address some of these other issues. We felt that with this being a town meeting where the budget should be the star, right? The budget is the motor that makes our town go. We didn't want to deviate too far from that and put a lot of things on the call and have discussions go on and on without the budget being the main thing we're speaking about this evening. So again, demolition of buildings, leasing out of buildings, sale of town property. You'll be seeing another meeting coming up on Monday, June 13th. Okay. Now I'm going to open the floor. And when we open the floor to the town meeting, we know this is a town meeting form of government. So tonight you are the legislative body. So when I open the floor, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look for nominations for a moderator for tonight's meeting. Do I hear any nominations for a moderator to run tonight's meeting? Carl Johnson? Carl Johnson has nominated Lisa Marzella. Do I have a second? Okay, Salvatore Shrenzia has seconded that nomination. Do I hear any other nominations for a moderator? Any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, I'll accept a motion to close nominations. Thank you. Carl? Okay, so Salvatore's motion to close nominations, Carl seconded. Now we will vote. All those in favor of closing nominations for moderator, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we have one nominee for moderator this evening is Lisa Marzella. We'll have a vote on Lisa Marzella. All in favor of naming Lisa Marzella as our moderator for tonight's meeting, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, Lisa, you can take over the meeting. Thank you.
There we go. We'll go over the ground rules for the town meeting. All town residents wishing to speak shall raise their hand to be recognized. I'll call speakers one at a time. No, I won't, because Brett's going to be roving. Just raise your hand and Brett will come see you. Before you comment, though, please state your name and address. Comments must be on topic, addressed solely to the question on the agenda. Individuals may have a second opportunity to speak only after everyone wishing to speak once has been recognized. Each speaker will be limited to 2 minutes and cannot yield their time. We will hear presentations from the Board of Finance, from Paul Simons, Bob Carlson, representing the Board of Selectmen, and Christine Wagner, representing the Board of Education. On questions of protocol, voters may respectfully ask point of order on procedure. Voter eligibility is summarized as follows. All registered voters of North Stonington and all persons owning at least $1,000 of taxable property on the last grand list are eligible to vote on the budget. Section 7-6. Any person not legally qualified who fraudulently votes in any town meeting or votes more than once shall be fined not less than $300 or more than $500 and shall be imprisoned not less than 1 year or more than 2 years and shall be disenfranchised. Voting by assuming the name of another shall be guilty of a Class D felony, Section 9-360. Following discussion, I'll call to move the question to referendum. When voting to move the question to referendum, we'll vote by a show of hands. Hearing no objections, these are the rules of the town meeting. I'll ask the town clerk to read the call.
Warning is hereby given to the electors and those entitled to vote at town meetings of the town of North Stonington that the annual town budget meeting shall be held at the following location on the date and time indicated for the purposes of transacting the business set forth below. Location, North Stonington Education Center Media Center, 298 Norwich Westerly Road, and via Zoom. Zoom link is given in the call of the meeting. Webinar ID 840-1112-8684. Date, May 2nd, 2022, time 6 p.m. Number 1, shall the town of North Stonington approve the estimates and recommendations of the Board of Finance with respect to the annual budget, including general government operating, $5,319,361, redemption of debt, $1,382,949, and capital, $408,655 for fiscal year July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023, in the total amount of $7,110,965. Number 2, shall the town of North Stonington approve the estimates and recommendations of the Board of Finance with respect to the annual Board of Education budget for fiscal year July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023, in the amount of $14,527,467. Number 3, shall the town of North Stonington approve $1 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds to replace lost public sector revenue and fund a portion of the demolition of the one-story wing of 298 Norwich Westerly Road. Number 4, shall the town of North Stonington approve an ordinance creating a municipal park and recreation capital and non-recurring expense fund and amend the existing ordinance Recreation Commission Section 14-1C, and for the town clerk to be allowed to publish an abbreviated version of the legal ad regarding the notice of passage of these ordinances. Copies of both are available on the town's website and at the town clerk's office. Notice of referendum. Resolved, the Board of Selectmen, pursuant to its authority under Connecticut General Statutes, Section 7-7, hereby removes the questions to be considered at the May 2nd, 2022 annual town meeting cited in the prior resolution to a referendum to be held on May 16, 2022. The hours for voting at said referendum shall be established by vote at the May 2nd, 2022 town meeting. Said hours are recommended by the Board of Selectmen to be 6:00 a.m. to 8:00 p.m.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to discuss the call? Charlie Smith makes a motion, second. And Norwalk. I'll hand it over to Paul Simons, Board of Finance.
Thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Paul Simons, this year's chairman of the Board of Finance. Few slides we'll have tonight, all of which you've seen at the town hearing last week before last. Thank you. So the major objectives this year are pretty simple. So we will, took into account the economy, state of our country as it is now, and inflation pressures. We wanted to close the budget shortfall from last year while still supporting all the educational needs of the town and the Board of Selectmen and capital projects that we have. We want to accomplish all this year with a balanced budget, which has not been the case the last couple of years. Oh, Lord. So that grand list has grown some, nearly $600 million in total, about $27 million in growth. Those growth drivers were primarily from personal property, motor vehicle, and increases in value. Additional revenues from a solar project and some rental income we hope to get. We should realize that later this year. Revenues for additional spending was about $750,000 in our first pass. So what you're seeing before you now is actually the budgets that came back to the Board of Finance from the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education after some discussion. There's going to be some healthy increases. You might call them modest, but it's going to be about $500,000 of new spending, about $307,000 for the Board of Selectmen, and about $250,000 for the Board of Education. Like I said, this is all the plan was for a balanced budget. The last 2 years, supporting the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Education, and redemption of debt, we were forced to take some money from our undesignated fund. 2 budget cycles ago was about $440,000. This past budget cycle was closer to $200,000. So we had to spend a little bit more than the revenues coming in. So we took that from the undesignated fund. This year, with the work from the Board of Education and Board of Selectmen, we were able to do everything with a balanced budget. So everyone got their needs, maybe not necessarily all we wanted to give to the departments, but we were able to do that with a balanced budget with no anticipated mill rate increase. And still, put a little bit of money, about $15,000 back into our undesignated fund. What you're seeing before you is a little snapshot of where we all are. So first 2 lines probably tell it all. Our revenues do exceed our expenditures. It's always a good side of that curve to be on. About $15,000 will be going back to our undesignated. You see the redemption of the outstanding debt we have from our 2 major projects we have in town. And all of that is about 6.4% of our total expenditures. So it's about $1.3 million, I think, that we get back to redemption of debt. That's about 6.4% of our overall expenditures. Undesignated fund is still very healthy, greater than $3 million. And that's about 14.4% of our expenditure budget, which is on the high side of that curve. State statutes say we can be down closer to 8 or 9 or as high as 15. So we're certainly on the upper end of that. Very good financial position for it. Oh, sorry. Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, hi, I'm Bob Carlson, the first selectman. I'll be doing the Board of Selectmen budget tonight, the general government budget. If you have you can see the slide, or if you have the pamphlet in front of you, you'll see that we're looking for a 2.74% increase over last year and a 68.34% in capital. Underneath that, there's a small box, and it shows you we have 2.74% proposed for this year, 1.36 last year's budget, and 0.71 the year before. I hope to prove to you in the next few minutes that this is the most transparent and fiscally sound budget of the 3. And hopefully when I get done speaking, you'll agree with me. You want to just turn the page, change the slide? So as I think Paul mentioned, in the past, the Board of Selectmen had seen a lot of appropriations come in after the budget. And the thing with appropriations are, if there are things that we're going to be buying as a town, they should be in the budget. I know last year there was a truck that came in front of us that we ended up purchasing, I think, for around $53,000. And probably should have been approved in the budget. So our thought as a board was to try to get through this year without any additional appropriations, just stick to what was in the budget and that's it, and not come to the town and ask for any non-budgeted items that should have been in the original budget. Secondly, again, Paul mentioned this, well, I'm going to go skip that one. The town, as far as appropriations go from the Board of Finance, 2 years ago, there was no money put into this building, the 298 building. And we know we had quite a bit of expense that the town had to pay. And we came back and asked the town for $96,752 after the fact. This year, we've held on ARPA funding of about $140,000 to keep in reserve in case we have those kind of numbers again to pay for the expenses for this campus we're in today. We don't want to go back to the town and ask them for the money, so we kept ARPA funds available, so we don't have to do that. So you're not going to see that coming down the pike later this year. We did put $85,000 in a line item. You might think, well, why 85 if we asked for 96 and you're holding back 140? Well, two things. You'll see at the next town meeting, hopefully on June 13th, that there's going to be a plan to come in front of the town and ask if we can demo the one-story wing, the old middle school, which is going to save us quite a bit of money when it comes to expenses next year. And I've got a very strong candidate. I met with them again today to lease out the first floor of the two-story wing, which will bring about $32,000 to the town. Those two things combined will be able to get us down to well under where the expenses for this year and last year. Third, 2 years ago, the Board of Finance decided to put $440,000 into the budget from the undesignated fund to balance the budget. This last year's budget, they put $194,000. And this year, we're asking them to put $0 in to balance the budget. So the combination of no future appropriations, we hope, I'm knocking on wood because there's always surprises. The fact that we are budgeting for money to cover the expenses in this campus we're in now, and the fact that we've asked the Board of Finance not to put any money in to balance the budget, those three things combined are making this budget a more realistic budget. To give you an idea that the budget of 2.74, if you take just the $85,000 out of that, that goes from 2.74 to 1.02 as an increase. Can you to turn the page? We're going to look at some of the major changes in the budget. Instead of going line item by line item, I'm going department by department. If you look at B1 Board of Selectmen, that was a $1,877 decrease. That's basically because the first selectman's salary is decreased because the previous first selectman had a higher salary, and we decided that would be lower for this year. The next bigger increase is on the Board of Finance. It's an increase of $4,350. That's due to our auditor retired, and we had to go and find a new auditing company, and it was a little bit more expensive. The assessor's office, $4,701.18. That's basically due to contractual obligations, expenses. He's buying toner now, and postage is going up. That's what that increase is from. 1661 in the tax collector, which is contractual. Town clerk 859.45, again contractual. Turning the page to Economic Development Commission, 6,290 is the EDC is looking to get a person there to do a lot of their administrative work. We've been using my administrator from Town Hall right now on a part-time basis, and we're already seeing great results. So they put money into the budget to cover that position going forward. Recreation Commission, you see an increase there of $15,235.04, but that's offset by an $18,000 increase in the revenue, so on the revenue side. So it's really not, we're not paying that, we're getting money to reimburse that. The next line, fixed charges, $2,511.36. That's pretty much insurance and pension increases. Board election and town meetings, 1487 is contractual. Town hall, 85,000. That's the 85,000 I just mentioned that we're putting as a line item that was put in as zero the last 2 years. That's to cover the expenses in this building. Social services and welfare. If you're at the community conversation, there was a lot of discussion about mental health coming out of COVID. And we've decided to put in additional monies for the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center and the United Community and Family Services, two groups that do an awful lot of work with the town of North Stonington and our citizens. Selectmen's Engineering Services, nothing there, did not increase that. Information Technology Services, $9,370.94. That's contractual, but it's also because we picked up Infinite Visions, a portion that the Board of Ed was paying. We agreed to take a portion back from them and digitize maintenance. Turn the page. Public Works is an increase of $16,539.99 and an increase of $3,439.26. That's mostly wages, the price of diesel, the price of fuel, and some increase in state roads. Conservation of Health, that's a small negative. That was because Ledge Lake Health District decreased their what we owe them by $334. Senior Citizens, $757.09 was wages. Miscellaneous, $15,000. That's the Lake Association. They have grant money left each year. They try to have weed control by putting things into we have 3 major lakes in town. There's plenty of money left in capital for that, so they didn't need to get the extra $15,000 this year. Land Use Department is wages. It's also training for our land officer. Nate, he has to go to Casio training. It's part of the job, and we have to pay for that. Turn the page to capital. Municipal leases. You'll see there's 3 leases there. A tractor mower. There's a tanker for the North Stonington Fire Company, and then also the Ambulance Association. That's $64,685 for the ambulance. This is the 5th year out of 5 years, so this is the last year we'll see this. That's paid in full. For new projects, we're asking for $25,000 for bulky waste. You might have heard at the transfer station, we have a bulky waste pile. We're one of only about 3 towns that still have a bulky waste pile. And I've been hearing mixed reviews. I know it's 10 years, 15 years, but sometime we're going to have to close that. And when we do, we're hearing estimates of anywhere from $800,000 to $1.5 million to close it. And we have to stop budgeting for that. We don't charge for bulky waste. So we're budgeting $25,000, and you're going to see us probably keep budgeting that for years to come until the bill comes due, and then the town won't have to pay for the whole thing. Well, they'll have to pay, but we'll have money put aside for some of it. The walking floor trailer was a trailer that the highway foreman had asked for. The Board of Selectmen decided to only put half the money in for that this year and the other half for next year. So that's why we decreased the budget by $46,000. That was a $92,000 ask. The plan of conservation and development, $30,000. There's $15,000 left in that line item from last year's budget. With this 30, it'll bring up to $45,000, and we feel that we can do a good job and come up with a plan of conservation development, which is due in 2023. We think that money will be able to suffice as far as getting it done properly. There was a great job done in 2013, so we're not starting from scratch. And the last thing in capital is the animal control vehicle. The one she's using now is, I think it's the old fire chief's vehicle, and it's falling apart. And if you follow social media, you know that everyone says call Kosh every time you turn around, there's an animal loose, and it doesn't have to be a dog or a cat. It can be a cow, or up near us, it was one time was a bull, and she has to go get them, retrieve them, and bring them back. So she needs a new vehicle, and that's been a long time coming. Next page. So reoccurring capital, dump truck refurbishment, that's $10,000 for truck number 17. Each year we try to refurbish one vehicle at the town garage. By doing that, we don't have to keep buying new vehicles all the time. So again, that's truck number 17. Transfer station improvements, $10,000. We have to put new doors on the transfer station, and just general improvements that have to be done up there. Computer expenses of $17,000, town building maintenance of $20,000. A lot of that may be used, a lot of that money may be used to paint town hall. I don't know if you've seen the building my office is in, but it's been peeling and it's in desperate need of a paint job. I heard that's could run as much as $17,000 to do that. Volunteer fire company turnout gear of $23,000, land acquisition fund of $2,000. Now, this was a $20,000 ask, and the Board of Selectmen dropped it down to 10. Went to the Board of Finance, got dropped down to 7, and it ended up at 2. Every time we try to cut the budget more and more, these are the kind of things that get cut. It's been cut now. It's $2,000, which brings it up to a somewhat round number of $75,000. That's in capital right now if we were to purchase land as a town. Volunteer fire company rescue gear, $11,000. And lastly, the 1750 house, which we had open houses there this past year. We hope to have that rented out as early as June 1st, where what we're renting out for is $1,600 a month plus utilities, which will start bringing back money to the town. That building's been empty now for 3 years. The $30,000 plus the $25,000 that's in the budget right now, it's in the capital from last year's budget, will bring a total of $55,000 to refurbish some things in that house that we have to get done. There's a porch beam that needs to be fixed. Some floorboards need to be nailed down. The bulkhead, which is a wooden bulkhead, has to be remade. And the biggest one is we hope to, in the end of the summer, early fall, put in new windows, keeping with the tradition of the house and keeping the windows, if you know what, like a 12/12 or 6/6 is, we're going to stay with that. So whatever it is now, it's going to stay that way. Only it'll be more energy efficient. Double pane glass, argon filled, tilt windows that will do the job. And what's in there now is single pane glass. You can't open them; they're paint shut, and they're not. They're fine for the summer, but when we get to the winter time, we're going to want to upgrade those. And there's enough money in this budget to cover that. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so as I said, if I just took the 85,000 out of the 2.74% increase, it brings us down to a little over 1% increase. And that's why I think that this budget, without the appropriations, without the balancing by the Board of Finance through using undesignated funds and by actually putting money in the line item to cover this building's expenses, makes it a fiscally responsible budget and a transparent budget. Thank you very much. I guess I have to stay up here and do question number 3, right? No? Okay. Sorry, Christine.
All right. Good evening. Thank you guys all for coming out tonight. I'm just going to go over a few slides about the budget. I'd like to start out a little bit with where we are this year and how we got to where we are, and then where we're looking to move forward. If we want to go to the last year in review, we were really excited to get our kids back into the building last February. We were one of the first districts to get our kids back into school. It was really exciting, and it's making a really big difference on their ability to catch up in their learning and social and emotional welfare as well. When we started the budget last year, we pulled out $270,000 and reallocated it into different areas. We looked at our non-lapsing account and just pulled a few things out and went into some grant funds that we had available, and were able to cut last year's budget down to the $270,000. In doing that, though, we pulled out what we anticipated some special ed funding to be, in the hopes that we would be okay, and we really weren't. We were $293,000 short this year in special education. Special education is not an option. We have to pay for that. So obviously that was a current concern, but at the same time, after COVID and in reviewing our health benefits, because we are in a self-insured consortium, we actually are going to be able to save enough in our health insurance benefits to cover the shortfall in special education. So we're really excited about the trend with that. And when you see us look at this year's budget moving forward, we're anticipating that same savings moving into this year's budget. which is allowing us to do a lot of the things we're doing with still coming up with a low increase on this year's budget. Currently in our non-lapsing account, we have about a $255,000 balance. The biggest thing that funded that in the last 2 years is the savings that we saw from COVID. We don't anticipate being able to continue to build that fund as robustly, but we did have pretty significant savings from transportation and some other things while the kids were out. So we were able to keep a nice balance in that non-lapsing account. And what we're looking to do with that is obviously saving it for anything that's critical that might come up, so we don't have to put it into the budget. But also we're looking at one-time expenses to come from that account instead of putting into the budget and then that becoming a reoccurring line item in the budget. Next. Our budget process started as early as the end of January. The administrators worked with the superintendent to come forward with the zero-based budget. The educational needs and contractual obligations that we're showing tonight is a full 1.74% increase over last year's budget. And what we were able to do with some of the grant funding that we received from this most recent one from the federal government is we've put in mostly into staff to help our students come along. We put in a math interventionist at Wheeler and at the elementary school. We have reading specialists. We have a kindergarten paraprofessional that we've added, a program supervisor, and our stipends for math, reading, and special ed at each school and mental health PD supplies are all coming from grant funding. And those positions are making a huge impact for our students who are returning to school after being out for so long. I got to put my glasses on now, sorry. When the initial budget came to us from Mr. Nero and the administrators, we went through and reallocated a few things. We pulled out advertising. We're going now to mostly online advertising for positions. We do still by law are required to put something in the newspaper, but we're making it incredibly small. So we're not having to pay for very much paper advertising. We're adding more professional development back in. We think that's really critical that our staff continue to be developed and continue to find new programming. And then we took our program supervisors out and moved those into grant funds like I talked about before. We added in mulch for the playground. We need to keep that 3 or 4 inches to keep that safe. We put in a website coordinator stipend so that we can keep our website up to date. It needs some work there and we're going to start working on that soon. And again, we're putting in more money for professional development. And you'll see we had a little bit of a reduction in our administrative assistant at the central office. We have Apple Track software that we purchased, which helps us with hiring. And we took that out of the budget and we did that with the non-lapsing account this year. We did look at a new software program for the website and decided not to move forward with that. We're going to work with what we currently have. And we did have a benefit reduction of an additional $26,000 over when we first looked at the budget to when we brought it forward to the Board of Finance. And we're also sharing Infinite Visions with the town, which is a software program for our budgeting and our finances. So that saved us about $2,500 as well. So we made those cuts and went forward to the Board of Finance. And then after meeting with the Board of Finance and working towards the goal of keeping the mill rate flat and trying not to have any impact on the taxpayer, we reduced another $106,000 from the budget. The biggest part of that was staff retirements. We had 2 big retirement announcements come out in the last month or so, and we're hoping to fill those with a lower paid position. So that should equate about $70,000. We were able to cover a few of our school-wide supplies from this year's savings in the budget from that health insurance savings. And then we also are anticipating some tuition reduction going out to VOAG and to the magnet schools. We've had a lot of kids come back to district. We have a very low amount of kids going out of district right now because of what we're offering here. We have a lot of our kids who, even if they've tried to go out, are coming back because they want to be at Wheeler. So it's been really exciting. And then you'll see just a few other computer things that we cut out of that budget. This next page is a little bit tough to read. Basically, this is just showing you what money is coming into the town. It isn't necessarily reflected right in our budget, but I think it's good to see that the educational cost sharing money that's coming from the state has not been lowered. That has stayed flat this year, so that's been helpful. The other thing that is good to note is we do have tuition paying students now coming into district from Preston and Voluntown, and that's continuing to grow. Next year, we anticipate bringing in $114,000 directly into the town in tuition for those kids that are choosing Wheeler as a school of choice. And then the bottom part there is just some grants, all of the grants that the town receives that helps us with our educational costs. All right, I can go to the next page. Again, we've seen in the budget moving forward, almost $400,000 in savings on our medical. Super exciting to see that. We do anticipate that trend continuing because the way the consortium works is that there actually is a reserve to cover unexpected expenses with the medical, and they have a very healthy reserve right now. So we're hoping to continue to see that next year we won't turn around and say, oh, now it went up 100% or something. We're hoping to keep it lined where we anticipate it going. The other thing is you always hear us talk about contractual. With all of the turnover that we've had this year, and whenever a teacher goes out or a staff goes out, we're always looking at finding the very best replacement and also looking at what pay can we bring them in at. And this year, our salary increase is about 0.8%. Contractually, we're well over 2%, but because of the turnaround we've had, we're able to go ahead and bring that in quite a bit lower this year. There are some budget drivers. If you remember when I talked at the beginning, we cut out a lot of things out of the budget last year. We cut instructional supplies down to just about nothing. We have some increased fuel costs that we're anticipating this year. So we're able to bring those instructional supplies back into the budget, which is really exciting. We need the instructional supplies, obviously. We've done a personnel reevaluation. We've had to bring a lot of our positions up to kind of what the market bears right now. We've done that with we have a new superintendent starting, and I hope you guys all have the opportunity to meet him. It's going to be really exciting to bring him on board. We have our director of finance position has changed. We have a new director of facilities has come in. He's been fantastic. Any opportunity you have to meet him as well. Our nurse's aide position changed. Our guidance secretary position changed. We are in the process right now of doing an RFP for our groundskeeping and looking at that. And we're also looking at our IT department to see if there's any way we can leverage the money being spent there as well. We do think utilities are going to go up. Gas is obviously up. Diesel fuel, I'm sure you've all seen, is up. We do need to continue to purchase our Chromebook one-to-one program, which we had to cut out last year, but we were able to put it back in this year. It's about $25,000 a year. That is a line item that needs to be there every year. Our freshmen through senior, our freshmen are given a Chromebook when they come in their freshman year, and they keep that Chromebook all the way up through senior year. So we need to continue to replenish that program. And then again, our special education is going to be up by almost $200,000 this year. We also had to cut quite a few textbooks last year. We were able to bring those back into the budget. So if you looked at it, even just pulling out that special ed increase this year, if we were able to bring everything back into the budget, not counting that special ed piece, our actual impact on the budget would only be a 0.44% increase over last year. So we're really excited about all the positive things we're able to do with this budget and bring back in. And just a really good message. And it is really about that health insurance savings that's allowed us to do that. The next one is again, just to talk about our staffing changes a little bit. We've had a lot of staffing changes this year. Obviously, the superintendent, Mr. Nero's leaving us after 10 years. It's a big change for us. So we've spent a lot of time searching, finding a new superintendent. And Troy Hopkins is coming on board July 1st. We've aligned our business manager position. Our special ed director is brand new this year. She's also now in the new role of also taking on associate principal duties as well. Instead of hiring an associate principal over at the elementary school, we're able to take that role and have her do it both. Her name is Allison. She's a fantastic woman. I hope you all have the opportunity to meet her as well. Our facilities director is new this year. And again, aligned from a maintenance supervisor. He's doing really, really great work here. We are looking currently for a new administrative assistant over at the central office. Robbie's leaving us as well. So we've had a lot of central office changes that we want to make sure we're supporting our new superintendent coming in and lining him up for success. All right. Next one. So again, our overall impact to the budget is a 1.74% increase over last year. Our salaries and taxes decreased by 25,000. It's always, well, I've never been able to say that actually. So it's really nice to be able to say that. Our employee benefits are decreasing by 393,000. And 96% of our budget is always in the fixed costs, the benefits, and the salaries. So that leaves us about 4% for textbooks, library books, athletics, replacement equipment, new equipment. But we feel really good about this budget. We feel like we can take care of all of the needs without any holes or without, there's always, like Paul said, more that you would love to have to do even more with. But we aren't cutting things out of this budget that we think are going to be detrimental to a child's education. And the last one, we always just like to show this. We've been working really hard to keep the impact to the town low on our increases over the course of the years. It's been usually well under two, except for like in 2013 and 2018. So we're working really hard to try to, spend your tax dollars wisely as we can. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, question number 3. Shall the town of North Stonington approve $1 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds to replace lost public sector revenue and fund a portion of the demolition of the one-story wing of 298 Norwich Westerly Road? So what does that mean? There's been a lot of discussion since this campus is closed and we moved everything to the other side of the street except for this room and what the Board of Ed uses. And there's some people wanted to have the building demolished. Some people would like to save it. There's a cost to doing both of those things. We hope to have the RFP going to get bids on that work to get it demolished is going to be going out in about a week. We'll hope to have that back it's going to be approved on May 10th by the Board of Selectmen, go out on May 11th, get it back by June 1st, come to a town meeting on June 13th, and the town will decide what to do with that wing. Half that wing was built in 1950, half that wing was built in 1960. I know there's a lot of people in this room like history, but the building is, if you figure they do the math, part of that building's over 70 years old and part of that building's over 60 years old. And it's not in great condition. We know for a fact that it has PCBs. We know it had some asbestos in it. We also know it has faulty windows, a roof that leaks, and I'm hoping to have for that evening on June 13th, also have what the cost would be to refurbish it. So why the $1 million? We have been working with Leanne Gomes of the Council of Governments to keep us on track and doing things the way the state wants us to do it with American Rescue Funds. Up to date, everything we've done has been great. We had to send a report in, I think, at the end of this past month. And with the guidance we've been given, we can use $1 million of that money to use for demolition if that's what the town chooses to do. Whether it gets demoed or refurbished, it's going to cost money. And we can't use ARPA funding to decrease taxes. It's against the rules. So the best way, if you can't decrease taxes, is not to add any new expense to the taxpayer. It's going to cost more than $1 million to do this. I think when the RFPs come back, it could be anywhere from $1.3 million to $1.8 million. So we're gonna then, as a town, have to decide if you want it demoed. Does that money come out of the undesignated rainy day fund? Do we go for a loan for the money to support the balance after the $1 million? But whatever that happens, the town will decide that, and then we'll move forward with a plan. We know that right now that building costs us probably in the neighborhood of $40,000 to $50,000 a year in expenses just to sit there empty. And the longer it's empty, the more things happen that aren't good. Boilers breaking down, roofs continue to leak and so on. So what this question is asking is, can we use $1 million to demo that building if the town agrees to do that after the June 13th town meeting? If the town decides not to, and the town decides not to use $1 million to do any kind of refurbishing, then the money goes back to the town as ARPA funding, and we have till the end of 2024 to decide how to spend it. But that's the question. All right, thank you. And I'm going to have Brett Mastriani read question number 4.
Okay, question number 4. Shall the town of North Stonington approve an ordinance creating a municipal park and recreation capital and non-reoccurring expense fund and amend the existing ordinance Recreation Commission section 14-1C, and for the town clerk to be allowed to publish an abbreviated version of the legal ad regarding the notice of passage of these ordinances? Copies of both are available on the town's website in the town's clerk's office. A copy of this ordinance is in the packet. It's also been online. I'll touch on the highlights of it. I came upon this after looking at other towns and how their recreation funds work. The basics of this fund is to allow anyone that wishes to donate to Parks and Rec Commission to be able to do so, and those funds be held in a special account for, could be multiple purposes. The way the program we have now is each fund has to be explained, and each one in a separate account. So if someone wants to donate money for T-shirts, that has to be in one fund. If they want to donate money for improvements of a field, that has to be in another account, and each one maintained separately. This would allow a general fund for residents, anybody really, to donate funds for purposes of Parks and Rec. So briefly, it says all monies received by the town of North Stonington from whatever source and by whatever means as gifts for park and recreation purposes. 2, all monies received for the town of North Stonington from whatever source and by whatever means as governmental grants and loans for park and recreational purposes. All monies received by the town of North Stonington from the sale or voluntary or involuntary conveyance of land intended to be used for park and recreational purposes. All monies appropriated to said fund by the town of North Stonington would stay in this fund. The fund is in the custody of the town treasurer. I'll get on the back page, you'll see of what these monies can be used for. Acquisition, development, improvement, maintenance, and expansion of park and recreation lands, acquisition, erection, installation, maintenance, improvement, repair, and replacement of park and recreation facilities, development, establishment, improvement of park and recreation programs, and any other capital or non-reoccurring expenditure incurred by the fund for park and recreational purposes. So it can be approved for use in 2 ways: at our town annual budget meeting, if this is presented that way for use of the funds, or through the Board of Selectmen of up to $20,000 a year can be used at the request of Park and Rec Commission through the Board of Selectmen. I just want to emphasize that it is a little confusing to read it and go through it, but this isn't about taxpayer dollars. This is about donations from individuals, businesses, or any entity that wants to donate to our Parks and Rec program. It'll allow them to accept donations. There's towns that have donation forms right on their recreation page where you can PayPal and donate monies to them. It'll allow for outside funding, so we can have non-taxpayer funded facilities improvements of any of our fields. If anyone leaves wishes to leave us funds when they pass away for Parks and Rec, it would go into this fund. That's really it in a nutshell. It really, the emphasis is it's not about taxpayer dollars in this account. Now in here, it does allow money to be appropriated from the town into this fund if they so choose, but that isn't the purpose of that. And that would have to go through a normal budget cycle. And there is no intention of that happening, but that is in here in case in the future somebody wants to donate through a town fund. Thank you.
All right. We can open the floor to questions. And raise your hand to be recognized.
Mike Anderson, I'm on Cedars Road, which is a private road off of Legendwood Road. Brett, so this ordinance, I guess just to clarify for everybody, the recreational department gets money through the normal budget process. Where is that money held as far as an account? Would it be the same account as this account or a separate account?
No, anything, the budget is a separate entity of the money that we budgeted for the recreation department, all their programs and things like that that go through the normal budget process. That's in the regular general fund account. This is a separate fund that has an account balance. And I should note that each year at our town meeting, the town treasurer will have to give a report, and it will also be in our final audit of the town of what monies are still in there and what expenditures were made out of it. But it is a completely separate account, and it's not used to lower I just want to make that clear. It's not, you can't look in there and say, look, they got donations to do the field, so we're not going to fund any programs for rec in our budget. It's not used to lower our funding. It's used for improvements and outside facilities.
Right. It sounds like a great program. I just want to make sure we're clarified that they're separate accounts. And what was the 20,000 limit? Is that?
The 20,000 was per year that they can expend through the Board of Selectmen approving. Anything other than that would have to go through a special town meeting or at the budget process.
The rec department couldn't use funds that are donated for, at their own discretion. It has to go through the town process.
It up to 20,000, it goes through the Board of Selectmen. Over than that, it would go through a town meeting. We wanted to have some kind of checks and balances. So there's others, as you know, the rec commission is an appointed board. There's people that come and go. It should have some oversight to a certain extent. So that's where we came up with a 20,000 before it would have to go to a town meeting. We're trying to follow some of the same guidelines we use for other things, but it's important to know it's not tax revenue.
Right.
In there.
It's designated for that, but you guys have some oversight. That sounds good.
Correct.
Thanks.
John Olson, Wyosset Road. Question along the same question line. In the past, our town has had disputes over donations that were designated for a specific purpose or use of land for a specific purpose. And then we have issues that come up years later where that's in question or still needs to be decided whether it's going to be adhered to or not. You mentioned that the funds would all be pooled together into a general fund for recreation. Would that donations given, say, for T-shirts or for land development, field development, would they be on the books within the rec department, specifically designated separately for those purposes, even though it's in one account?
Yes, it would. So the rec commission, if it was a specific donation, we would make a note of that in a logbook. So
that
it would know.
Someone that wanted to add to that specific goal or purpose would be assured that the money would just be added to that specific purpose, even though it went into the one account to be held.
Correct.
Thank you.
Do you want me to do this? Any other questions? Brian?
I just got a few questions. Oh, Brian Rathbun, 263 Grindstone Hill Road. I heard that we're going to have, or we have students coming in from other places. And I don't know what the tuition is for them to come in. I don't know. How is it compared to how much it cost us per student? That's what I'm mostly concerned about, how much it costs me to pay for a student to be educated. So I don't know how much the tuition is. I'd like to find that out. The other thing I want to point out is I understand we got some new positions or continued positions that I just wondered how many of them are required by law and how many aren't. And the one last question I'd like to have touched on is, or just a statement basically, but I feel that we've already voted to not refurbish the building. I mean, I think that was one of the reasons, because it was so much in disrepair. That's why we got a new school across the street. So I don't even know why that's even an option. And those are my.
Brian, I can
Christine,
answer
would you
those.
like?
Yes, okay, sorry. The tuition we're charging right now for a student from Voluntown or Preston is $11,483. The cost per pupil for a North Stonington resident is going to be different because those programs are already in place. So that isn't an equation. They're not apples to apples. You don't use it that way. So for example, if I'm bringing in a student, we're not adding additional staff. Oops, right now we're not adding additional staffing. We're not adding any additional. Those towns pay their own transportation as well. So the entire cost to run a school and what the pupil cost is doesn't equate to what we charge for tuition. So our tuition number right now is $11,483. If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. And then the other thing is, as far as required by law, these are not, a lot of the changes that we had made are not contractual changes. They're non-cert staff, but they are absolutely necessary to run our school. We don't have any positions that aren't required to run our school.
Basically what you're telling me is a student can come in for $11,483.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I got a figure of $19,552 it cost me to educate a student. So if you subtract those two, I'm kicking in some extra money from my pocket. At least that's the way I feel. I know what you said, and you almost sound like a lawyer to me. Confuse me.
All right.
The other thing is the positions. I know the school may think it's very, very necessary. Right? If it's not required by the state, I'd say you reconsider them.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Lisa, can I answer the last part of the question?
Go ahead, Bob.
On the demolition, Brian, I agree the town did make a decision that should have been demoed when the new schools were built, and I agree with you. But I've had people come to me and say, why are we tearing down a building? Why don't we refurbish it? Again, ultimately, it's the town's decision. I'd like to see it demolished myself. I think that's what the town said they wanted to do, and I think we should do what the town asked. However, when this comes up at a town meeting, the floor is open. And if somebody wants to discuss the possibility of refurbishing, I'm not going to not let them speak. So because we're a democracy and we have a chance to speak in public, and we try to give as many people a chance to speak as possible, that refurbishing may come up. But I'm just my own personal opinion. I like to see it demolished.
Pat Lewis, Boombridge Road. I had a couple questions. On the $1 million appropriation, you said you're going to get RFPs after tonight. Why can't we just wait till we have the RFPs to see how much this is going to cost? And can we get RFPs on not only the whole building, but sections of the building? when we had our group meetings, it was brought up that perhaps the cafeteria and one of the wings could be used for other programs. That one of the gals said that they use the old firehouse, and they have to compete for time to use that facility, and thought that, using the cafeteria for some of those activities might be beneficial. So, you're promoting to get rid of it, but I think we should look and see if we do have a future use for it. Also, when it was voted to be brought down, to be taken down, I was that a one-line item that we built the school and we take the building down? Or was it a two-line item where we support the school, but do we or do we not want the building taken down? So I'm sure there are a lot of parents that came out to support the new school, voting to take down the building at the same time, but was that really their intent? So that's my opinion on bringing the building down. Also, the $1 million, if can it be used to purchase something that we would pay for in the future so that it could bring down future taxes? Then I had a question regarding, again, the recreation funds. Does that money have to be, if it's used for improvements, does it have to be used on town-owned properties, town-owned facilities?
So Pat, I'll answer some of those questions and I'll let Brett answer the last one. So yeah, it's been about 4 or 5 years since that referendum first came out. And it was a one-line item that the demolition of we call it the one-story wing, but that's really a misnomer because it's a portion, because everything but this building on this floor is one story also, but I guess we should call it the old middle school wing. And it was decided by the town in that referendum to take that down. Again, it's been 3 or 4 years. There may be a difference of opinion now than there was then. But as far as putting the money toward that, yeah, we could use ARPA funding for other reasons. We've already used ARPA funding for other reasons going up to this point. But I think this is a way that we could, if we can save, the town does want that building down, and we can save the taxpayer $1 million by using money that we have that we didn't have before, and we'll probably never have it again. That was the thought of the Board of Selectmen, was to use it toward that rather than say to the taxpayer, we have to come up with $1.5 million to do it. There'll be plenty of time for discussion. The reason why we got the RFP this way, because this is the way it was originally written in the original referendum, Pat. So, and it's the simplest way to do it, to take a portion down and refurbish a portion. I guess we could do that, but it's not in the spirit of what the original referendum asked for. So if the town votes no, and they don't want the building demolished, they want to come with Plan B, then we're here to listen to what the town wants. But this is the original plan, so that's why we're starting with this one and see where it goes. Brett, you want to answer the question?
Pat, if you look at it, it talks about expansion of park and recreation lands, acquisition, erection, installation, maintenance, improvement, repair, and replacement of park and recreation facilities and equipment. And technically any other capital or non-reoccurring expenditure incurred for park and recreational purposes. There's nothing in here that dictates it can't be used for something other than that, but I don't see, we never paid for another facility to be, sorry, there's a little. We've never paid for another property, someone else's property, to be renovated for recreational purposes. So, and that's why we do have checks and balances on this program.
Any other questions? Ann?
Hi, Ed Norwalk, 188 Northwest Corner Road. This is a funny mic. With the education budget, some of my questions have been asked. I'm concerned that the new person is getting a higher salary than Mr. Nero is leaving at, but I assume that's what it took to get him, but I think that's too bad. And the earlier meeting we had on the budget, Board of Education said, or the school said you had some little things sort of on the landscaping of the grounds and such so that the kids could do more outside in recess. And having watched the kids play at recess out here, that's important to them to let off steam and they get their little groups and they play with a ball or something like that. So I think they maybe need more room if it's available, and you should put that on your want list better than you did. Another, what kind of send-off are you going to do for Mr. Nero? You going to have a parade or march the band or do something special? He's certainly been a tribute to the town, and I think we're going to miss him. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to address the superintendent's position, you're right. We did have to go up on that number to get the person that we wanted. We wanted somebody, not that I want to get into the weeds on all of that, but we definitely had to be competitive with what was in the market, but also to note that he didn't take any health insurance benefits, which equated to $26,000. So we felt like we did okay there. We are looking at the grounds at the elementary school for the kids and playing. We would have to address that through the non-lapsing account because we don't have it in the budget to address it. And we don't know what we're going to do to say goodbye to Mr. Nero yet. We're still talking about that. Okay, thank you.
Joe Signer, 86 Northwest Corner Road. The $1 million on item 3, what was the, how was that derived? How'd you come up with that $1 million for the, how was it appropriated as the amount? Was there any survey done on, or any kind of?
Well, what we had, Joe, is we had about $1,250,000 left. So $1,250,000 left in the ARPA funding. We wanted to take $140,000 and keep it aside, so we wouldn't have to ask the taxpayers to pay for the expenses of this campus for this year's monies, like we did the last year. So taking the 140 that left us about $1.1 million, there's $1 million, $100,000 for a business plan that's just been completed by the EDC, the Economic Development Council, to give money to small businesses that might have lost money during COVID. That leaves us with $10,000 above and beyond the million. I guess I could say $1 million, just a nice round figure. We could have said $1,010,000, but and we knew it was going to. The original budget came in at around $1,250,000, $1,300,000 to take the building down when the new schools were built. So we wanted to take the biggest portion we could of that without hurting us on any other ARPA funding obligations we had already determined. So that's how we came up with $1 million.
Does that have to be spent by a certain time, or?
Yeah, it had to be earmarked by the end of 2024, which obviously we're into that. And it has to be spent by the end of 2026.
Bob, can I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
The Board of Selectmen, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, we want you to make sure that you understand that the ARPA funds that were given to the town, this is what was left. We identified and addressed everything from mental health to personal health to economic development in town for restaurants and businesses that lost money due to COVID. So I don't want the town to think that none of the money that we were given went to direct causes from COVID. That was all addressed in various ways, whether it was increasing in the budget or whether it was direct givings to local agencies. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that.
Thank you, Nicole.
Jennifer Dayton, 201 Ruderman Road. I have a question on the ordinance. In terms of the donations, can people refer to what I would call a wish list from Parks and Recreation before they make the donations? Or can someone hypothetically say, I'd like to donate goalposts for the game of rugby, which are different from the goalposts you would use in football? And can that donation, which is not in sync with our programs, go forward? And the second question is, have you considered a policy on naming rights? If you're going to make a $10,000 donation and you want your name attached to some capital expenditure, do you have a policy on that? I think it would be wise to do so.
Thank you. We haven't discussed naming rights as that came up, but that's a great idea to look into. And it can be earmarked for specific goals that someone's donating for. That is something that, speaking with the Rec Commission, that they will utilize whatever recommendation or why that's being donated. They will utilize it for those purposes. If it's something that they don't currently offer, I'm sure if someone donated rugby nets, and they would try to start a program for that. But it would come through the Rec Commission to move that forward. I also want to let everyone know this is through state statute. This isn't something that we just pulled out of the air. State statute allows us to do this. Preston has one, Ledyard has one. Those are the local towns around us that have the program set up like this, but many other towns and cities in the state have this. And what it ultimately does, it allows our rec department to grow and improve without taxpayers having to fund the whole bill. It's people that want to see the rec department grow and want to donate to them, be able to do so. So then at different budget times, we don't say, hey, our rec department, we fund way too much for our rec department and they need these facilities. I don't want to spend it. They can get donations to, improve a field or a clubhouse or things like that on their own without the taxpayers having to foot that bill.
Here, you're next.
Chad Stefanovich, 35 Button Road. Brett, I was just curious, the $20,000 number, is that similar to Preston and Ledyard? My curiosity is that knowing how expensive just about everything is to do on any sort of a scale, improvements will probably likely go over $20,000 if they're doing any major work. And I guess my concern would just be if we have to bring that to a referendum or a town vote every time, that it will cost us money to be able to run those votes as opposed to that piece. So
that was 20,000 is what we decided on the Board of Selectmen. I can tell you, I think Preston was 3,500. There were some that were lower, some didn't have any out of the towns I looked at in the state, but some of the ones that were like 3,500 in a year, they were written back in 1976, those statutes, or those ordinances. So we tried to come up with something that, has some sort of limits to it, oversight that, yes, it would need to go to a town meeting and be approved. The downside is, like, people are donating that money, so it's not tax dollars, but we felt like there needed to be some kind of oversight to it. And we felt sticking with that $20,000 number, which we do on many other things that have to go to town meeting, it kind of was fitting. I don't know if you have any.
Thank you. Thank you, Olivia Rinkus from Pond Drive. I just had a quick question regarding number 3. I definitely don't necessarily agree with the use of COVID rescue funds or COVID relief funds for something like demolition or construction. Has the town considered
said that they want to keep that way in town meetings and get rid of like one story in the middle school. That's the way we kind of attack it. We're lucky right now that we have someone interested in the first floor, and we might have a tenant that's looking to use part of the second floor. I mean, to have two tenants that want to use part of this building is phenomenal, because we've gone for 2 or 3 years without no interest. Again, that need restricted has a lot to play with it. I have to disagree with you on the $1 million. As Nicole said, we've given an awful lot of money out already to from mental health to physical fitness to small business. We kind of do our best we could to help people coming out of COVID, and we know we can't lower tax. And we know that this is something that's a big hit out of the town of Vasco. So we can't lower taxes. The best we can do is try to keep the town rather than pay for something that a lot of people tell you they already felt like they paid for. So with that mentality, this we thought as a board, and because it's within the guidelines put forth by the state of Connecticut, that we're well within grounds to do it this way. If the town disagrees, and this will go to a referendum, I'm not going to do this hopefully at a town meeting with 35 people. If it goes to referendum, the town votes no. No, we'll go back to the drawing board with all the uses. But as of right now, that's the way we're attacking it.
And I just want to also state that part of that one story, which was always slated to come down, where I first met Bob was on the school building committee, and we wrote on it like 2008, 2006.
1924.
Yeah, but that was exactly, that was always the first part of the building, and that was always slated to come down, even into the prior building projects. It was never slated to be kept. And then during the building project, we ran out of funds for it, basically, with some overruns and PCD mitigation in the elementary school and some other things. It ran out of money. So when we talk about using the COVID money to help minimize the expenses the town is knocking down, it did kind of fit into the program. Otherwise, it is revenue that or taxes that we would have to either raise to knock it down.
Try it.
So it would have been money that we either had to take out of the undesignated fund, which is our reserve account, or raise taxes to help pay for part of that demo. So this was the best way to have the least impact on our residents during a tough time that they've had with COVID in salaries and things going on where, lost wages. This is something that it's almost a once in a lifetime opportunity for us to mitigate the problems that we've had without a direct huge increase to the tax base.
Christine?
Thank you. I just had an answer for Brian on one of his questions. Peter had let me know your question about positions required by law. Hold on, he had sent me a message. Everything in the budget's required by law, regulation, or contract, including all positions. So just to get clarification for you on that.
Thank you. Any other comments of anyone who hasn't spoken yet? Joe?
I feel very strong with the budget this year. The first part is recreation, please. If you take a donation, you cannot have it earmarked. We've gone through that in the fire department many years ago. Somebody send you a $10 donation and want to buy a stretcher. You know how many $10 donations it takes to buy a stretcher? 5 years, you may get half of it, okay? Never earmark a donation. No, what I was going to say. It's really nice to see a group of people here. Usually we only have 4 people. And a lot of the comments made tonight that have been discussed, as you can see, this is the first copy of the budget that the selectmen gave to the Board of Finance. And I can show you the third copy that was made to give to the Board of Finance. The only question I would like from the Board of Finance, if the $1 million, by the way, too, if we talk about the demolition, it was in there in the original contract. The original contract dealt with the elementary school, the high school, and the demolition of this building. A bad decision was made. The decision should have gone back to the town when all that PCVs and everything was there, and we didn't have the money in there to do it. So we took the $1 million for the demolition, took care of the PCVs, and here we are looking for another $1 million. But that's my taxpayer dollars, not yours. The thing that goes on is I would like from the board that if this budget passes, there will be no mid-year appropriations of any kind. Seeing that we've done such a great job making everything meet, and we got a budget that the people had, so there's no raise, and you can't buy it, buddy. Today's world, everything's gone up. That will also include your tax dollar too. It's impossible to keep it the way it is. But we've done it, and we've done a hell of a job. The only question I'm asking is, if the budget goes through, can the Board of Finance say, I will not approve any mid-year terms of giving out money in that during the year? That you will stay with this budget, and this budget goes till next year's budget. And if that can't be made, then I'm going to tell you, you're going to have numerous mid-year appropriations. Not only the ones at 20,000, it'll be later than that.
We'll come back to you.
Thank you, Joe. I mean, it is the intent not to have appropriations mid-year, but again, I don't have a crystal ball. Neither do you. Great. That should be the target, right? And I think Bob has said as much.
Anyone else? Anyone else that hasn't spoken yet like to make a comment? John?
John Olson, Wyosset Road. On April 11th, when we had the previous presentation of the budget, there was a major discussion toward the end of the evening with regard to an anticipated, with this neutral budget, that there might be $109,000 in excess with expected revenues as opposed to expected expenditures. There was a major discussion as to what are the three ways that the town would like to use that money. One of them was to look for other projects to spend money on. The other was to put it in the undesignated fund and save it for future expenses. And the third, which I had suggested, was that we use it to pay down the debt, because that $109,000 would alleviate over the next 30 years the interest of, I think it was $90,000 more against the future budgets by saving on the interest if we pay down the debt. I got here late, apologize if I didn't hear it discussed, but I haven't heard any word about that this evening as to how that's anticipated or written into this budget.
So I think what you'll find is there was a fourth option there. It would have been taxpayer relief. So what this budget shows is a proposal for some minor adjustment to the mill rate, with still leaving $15,000 to go to the undesignated. So that's what this represents. The 109,000 went to a combination of potential taxpayer mill relief and a little bit of money going into the undesignated. That was a decision of the Board of Finance. That was, that's the target.
Pat Lewis, Boombridge Road. It's good to see in this education budget that you're spending $25,000 on textbooks. I think every budget I've seen in the past 5 or 10 years, they've decreased textbook expenditures. And I know it's not the time to find out where they're going to be used for or how they select them, but that was a good thing to see it back in the budget. And on the grants program that you're using to fund the new positions, is that something you expect to happen every year, or does that go away every year?
Currently, they're one-year grant-funded positions, so they would be slated to go away unless we determine there was still a significant need for that, and then we would have to try to find out in future budgets if there was a way to fund that.
So these positions that you're funding now are really like one-year positions then?
They are, and they're contracted that way. Those people know that those are one-year positions.
And my other question had to do with the Gallup House, $30,000 we've been spending for the past 3 years. Do you expect with the rental income that will be decreased in the future, or will we still need money to make more improvements?
I think that we will, it's an old house built in the 1750s. I can't imagine we're not going to need to make improvements down the road, probably roofing and so on, but it doesn't need to be done now. And with that $1,600 per month, comes out to about $19,000 a year. That will go a long way into when we bank that money, then when we do need something for the home, it'll be, we'll be able to have a fund to take that money out of. As of right now, with no income coming in the last 3 years, we've had to use a combination of taxpayer dollars and grants to get the building where it is now. And I think with the additional 30,000 this year, we should get that as very livable with new windows and other, as I spoke about earlier, other improvements that needed to be done.
What's that? Nothing online right now. Is there someone? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Carolyn Howell.
State your address, please.
Carolyn, just unmute yourself.
Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Moving. It was, but it was.
Shall I just take another question? Anyone else like to comment? Anyone who hasn't commented yet like to comment? Okay, Brian?
No, the computer.
Yeah, on this ordinance that's possibly going to be created, is that going to be another line item too, added to the budget in the future years that the town is going to have to fund a certain amount to, or is this just going to be totally donations and things like that?
It's intended to be totally donations. There is an opportunity that the town could donate money to that if they chose to, but that's just how pretty much all those ordinances are read to say, hey, if the town decided to put money into that account, they could. But that's not the purpose of this ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Mike?
Again, Mike Anderson, Cedars Road. Paul, just to clarify for everyone here in the audience, there's on our sheets and I guess online, given the expenditures and the revenues that were shown in this budget and the surplus of 15,000 and change going to undesignated, what mill rate is used to calculate that undesignated fund reserve?
Thank you, Mike. So the revenues in this budget you have before you are calculated on a 28.45 mill rate, slight reduction from last year's 28.6. So that used up that 109,000. So it really never came to town if this budget should pass, but still allows $15,000 to go into undesignated. So some modest taxpayer relief, still putting a little money in the rainy day fund. Okay, 28.45.
Does anyone not understand that in the audience? Because we had at the last hearing, we had 109,000. We were wondering what to do with it.
Right. All right.
Some's going to undesignated and some's going to, under this proposal would go to lower the mill rate to 20.
28.45.
Thank you.
And there's other good options, right? Tax, debt relief, other options, other projects, but this is the path we decided to go in this proposal.
And I just wanted to also mention that tax relief is because of the revenues. It's not like in the past when we minimized the increase we dipped into the undesignated fund. So the tax increase wouldn't be seen by the taxpayers or felt by the taxpayers. If you've been paying attention to the news, there's other towns lowering their mill rate. Stonington, for instance, is lowering their mill rate, but they're actually dipping in to their undesignated fund to do it. So they're dipping into their savings to do it. We were all able to do that without dipping in by having more of a balanced budget.
Okay, Carolyn Howell, you're recognized.
Carolyn, just go ahead and unmute. We had a technical difficulty on our side, but we think we fixed it.
Okay, can you hear me now?
And
okay. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's worked on this budget. I have to participate remotely tonight, but other than not being able to speak, it's so easy to hear everyone, and this has been really easy to watch and understand, and it's just a pleasure. So just wanted to say thank you for all the hard work tonight and that's gone into this budget.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Questions? Okay. Need a motion to close discussion? Anino? Gary, Anino? Gary made the motion. Second? Carl seconds. Okay. So now I need a motion to accept the hours of voting from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Motion made by Jen Dayton and seconded by Mike Anderson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any discussion? Motion carries. So I'd like to have a motion to move all questions to referendum. And Norwalk made the motion. Chet Stefanowski seconds. Any discussion? Motion carries. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we need to raise our hand to vote to move all questions to referendum. So all in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion to adjourn. Anybody want to talk about that? Thank you.